What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Morello Show. Sorry for the little layoff. I had a little scheduling issue, but we streamed instead. I don't know if anybody watched, but that's okay. Episode number 29, and we've got another three-person one today. So let's get right into this. First, returning for the second time on the Morello Show, we have the one and only Daniel Buzz Wilson. Buzz, how we doing?
What's up? Happy to return to the Morello Show as Ray gives me the thumbs down there. Very happy to be back on. I believe we did this last year. It was either early baseball season or
It was
somewhere.
I think it was June. I think it was last June.
Okay, so last June. Always happy to come back, talk some baseball. Happy to hop on with you and Ray, and yeah, this should be a good time.
Yeah, always happy to have you back. And like Buzz mentioned, for the first time, and returning the favor because I was on his podcast right in the beginning of the pandemic. So very happy to finally have him on. Ray Dunne, how are we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I give the thumbs down to Buzz, but I realized that there probably won't be a ton of differences or real crazy differences in takes. So as I gave him the thumbs down, it's probably going to end up coming to haunt me by the end of the show when I end up agreeing with him on a number of things. But other than that, I'm doing good. I just grateful every day. Every day, something else happens that makes me more and more excited. Right now, dealing with Lance Lynn news that makes me devastated. But aside from that, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to see anybody hurt. Obviously, I had some bad news on, I think it was Friday, that we will for sure get into. But yeah, we are at the time that this will be out. This will be 2 days away from opening day. And there's nothing better than that. So let's get right into it. First thing I definitely want to talk about. Obviously, you see me wearing the jersey. I could not, the hat too, could not. We got New York Mets baseball coming up soon, but you guys are Philadelphia Phillies fans. So I want to know your guys' opinion on this. It kind of reignited last year a little bit, but both teams are projecting to be pretty good this year. Obviously, the DeGrom injury news did not help. But Buzz, we'll start with you. Do we think the rivalry is finally back? I mean, the teams haven't been good at the same time in over a decade. Is the rivalry back?
Yeah, I think you got a little taste of it last year. I think these two teams played. So it was the opening series for the Mets, right? Because they had that series with the Marlins washed.
Yes.
And it was the second Phillies series of the year. And a lot of Mets fans came down. And it felt like there was a little bit of juice back in the ballpark. And then I went up for a doubleheader in June, and there were some Phillies fans back in the ballpark up at Citi Field. So I think the rivalry being back kind of knocked on the door last year. Now, for the rivalry to fully be back, I'd say like you need these two teams playing down the stretch of the season, both in a playoff race. And while the Phillies were like kind of in it last year, like they weren't really, fully in. And obviously, the Mets have gone through their own struggles in recent years, but the Phillies have actually been the team not holding up their end of the bargain for much longer here, given that they have a playoff drought that dates back to 2011. So if these two teams are like legitimately in it down the stretch of the season, and I expect, by the way, early in the season to see the same thing you saw a year ago. These two teams play, I think, second series of again this year, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Citizens Bank Park. I would expect to see some Mets fans in the stadium for that. I'm not off the top of my head. I do not know when the Phillies make their first trip to Citi Field, but I'd imagine there will be some Phillies fans in the crowd for that. That's when the rivalry is at its peak. I think it's a rivalry based on proximity more than anything else. I know Pete Alonso made comments about playing in Philadelphia once, and Rhys Hoskins has been asked, or like since he's been here for a little bit. So the two first basemen have kind of contributed to it, and Bryce Harper plays into the whole Philly guy thing. But there's been a lot of changing faces on these two teams that, from a player standpoint, the rivalry probably isn't fully where it needs to be. But from a fan standpoint, it's entirely based on proximity. 2 miles or two cities separated by 90 miles. So when you get meaningful baseball with fans from both places in the stands, I think that's when the rivalry will be fully back. And to your point, yeah, I'd say there's a pretty good shot. Expanded playoffs certainly helps with this, that we'll see the rivalry fully come back by the time the season ends.
Okay, yeah. I mean, and they the first series that the Phillies play in New York is the end of April. So 2 series in the first month of the season that are shared at each other's ballpark. So I'm sure you'll see Philly fans traveling up to New York. You'll see New York fans traveling down to Philly. And when the teams get together and the fans clash, it's pretty interesting. So, Ray, what do you think about it?
need Dom Smith remaining a Met. That is what we need for this rivalry. We need Alvarado, Smith. We need another round of that. We need that type of energy. And I think Buzz hit it with the players. We have similar roster construction, I guess, from a year ago. On top of that, both teams have added talent to feel the stakes rising on both sides, feel the guys who have been there kind of have an idea of what that back and forth is going to be like. And I mean, frankly, both teams failed to meet their expectations a season ago of what they wanted to do. The added pressure of trying to do that. It's two teams on a collision in a division that's going to be hotly contested. There's no way this rivalry isn't back by the end of this season. In my eyes, I mean, I feel like we've hit the point where if the Phillies can't make the playoffs this year, like, I don't even want to actually fathom that reality, like try and even wrap my head around that, because it's just such an organizational failure if that's the case this year. And for the Mets, Uncle Stevie backed up the Brinks truck. Like, there is money to be spent. There's stuff, there is a team on the field that expects to win, expects to compete. And, injuries aside, and I know we're going to get to that, when it comes to September, if these two teams aren't at that 90-win area and trying to fight one another for the playoffs, there's going to be a bigger problem than whether or not the rivalry's back. So the rivalry is kind of forced to be back because these two teams have to take that step forward this year. And they know that. The guys in the clubhouse have been through this before against these franchises. And for me, if it's not back, this is going to be the last thing for my mind if it's not back. But I'm certain we're going to have a very, very important series very late between these two teams.
By the way, need Nick Castellanos somehow getting involved with this rivalry. The guy's only ever played Midwest, between the Tigers and the Reds. And, now that he's he feels personality-wise, and Ray, you can tell me if you agree with this, he feels like a Northeast city, rivalry type of guy. The last at bat he had in Philly, I was at the game with friend of the podcast, Jason Cantor, and he gets rung up, and it was a pitch he obviously didn't agree with, and he points to the umpire and immediately gets tossed, and presumably he told the umpire to go F himself because he was there was no delay in throwing him out of the game. This is a guy who obviously is very, very good, very, very intense. We know that he does not have a college degree. He just hits baseballs. His opening press conference was intense. And he also once, after a play at the plate, flexed on a pitcher. He feels like a guy who is not the type of guy you want to throw at. He is going to show a lot of emotion in some big game between these two teams this year. So an early player to watch, who is one of the additions for these two teams, Nick Castellanos, will somehow be a big player in the 2022 Phillies-Mets rivalry.
I saw him, obviously thrilled that he's a Philly, but in my head, he's just like a Red Sox. I feel like for some reason
Castellanos, he just has a Red Sox vibe to you?
Yeah, I feel like I could see him just punching out a Yankees pitcher. That's just kind of the mentality he gives me. And maybe it's just the punchability of a Yankee, but that's just kind of the vibe he gives me in that sense of who he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the – no, go ahead, Buzz.
I was I need that type of thing. I usually think the old school baseball mentality, throwing at guys, charging the mound is I wish there was actually less of it. And I played baseball my entire career. I think baseball players are just over petty sometimes, but if it's going to add to the chippiness of a rivalry, who's to say that wouldn't be, a bit of a good thing.
I'll let you get this back on the rails in a second, Kyle, but to the old school thing, I think it's going to be hilarious this year when people are lauding the Phillies' approach as a lineup, when it's going to be the same approach as a year ago, but with actual talent that makes it, it's going to be hysterical, the old school heel turn on what's happening in baseball this year if the Phillies are as excited as they're built up to be right now.
It's going to be very exciting. And Castellanos is the perfect person for this rivalry, like you both said. I mean, he's got that grit to him. He's obviously a very good ball player.
Scherzer is too, by the way.
Which was something I was going to get into. Scherzer is the exact, for our side of the rivalry, Scherzer is the exact opposite of what you want. When Scherzer and Castellanos face each other in an at-bat, it's going to be must-watch TV because Scherzer is obviously one of the most intense players in the whole game, not even just on these two teams, and obviously one of the best pitchers in baseball too. It's just going to be fun.
We should be getting that in that opening, like the Mets open with 3 games. And I'm sure there's going to be the opening day starter, assuming, he's healthy, good to go. He would pitch in that Wednesday game, right? That day game.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so we could get it early.
We could get we could get it early, which is something I think we're all very much looking forward to. So, but yeah, I mean, we're the perfect people for this rivalry. Obviously, the Phillies added Schwarber too, who's kind of another one of those just mashes baseballs and doesn't really care about anything else kind of people, which is great. And we added Marcana and Starling Marte. Obviously, we have Pete and Dom and all the people from last year too. So the new faces to this rivalry are going to make it even better. And I'm very excited for that. It's going to be fun. So yeah, back to the whole league though. I just wanted to get that part in, of course. Back to the whole league though. There was a trade. This is being recorded on Sunday. There was a trade today. Sean Manaea going to the San Diego Padres. That the A's now have a payroll of $33 million. The Pirates are kind of in that similar range. And you're kind of seeing teams, slash their payrolls even after the CBA was agreed to, which is trying to prevent tanking, but it seems like it's continuing anyway. Ray, we'll start with you. How do you kind of feel about teams having these extremely low payrolls and intentionally losing, even though the league clearly tried to stop it in the offseason?
Yeah, it's really tough to try and curb anything like that. Truthfully, I don't know how you go about doing it. I mean, the floor, like a spending floor would be something to talk about. I know that was something that had been kind of thrown around, but didn't gain a lot of legs. For me, when it comes to the team spending less, I'm just upset for the players that are subjected to be on those teams that don't have a real option out, and the fans in the area. I mean, Oakland, for all intents and purposes, has been very competitive given what they pay year in and year out. Their wins per million or million per win, whatever it is. They tend to be one of the best in the league at that. On that same token, how many teams could they have taken over the hump if they had just tried to go in? I mean, there's a serious question if they had spent money a little bit more, whether or not they would take things to the next level. And also to those fans, they still show out. There was discussion of a new ballpark. You want to spend money to put a ballpark in a town when you're not going to spend money to put a good product on the field? You're going to force the taxpayers to pay. Like, that's a lot. There's a lot of heavy conversations to be had, especially when it comes to the A's. So I don't like it because there's so many things that go into putting together a ball club and really putting a community around it. And if you're not going to invest, whether it be in that community or invest in the team at least to give them the best product on the field, it's disappointing. And I understand tanking. I don't want to take away from tanking. In baseball, it's different, because you don't have the home run type of terrible use of language there and there. But the sure thing type of pick where you might at the top of an NBA draft, an NFL draft, you get those blue chip prospects in some cases for baseball teams, but it takes a while to get them through the system. So when you do that, I understand losing for a year or two and shedding payroll and getting younger and making things happen. But when you have these teams that are perpetually shedding, especially when it looks like they're about to turn a corner, it's incredibly frustrating. I think, windows aren't 1 or 2 year things. You can expand a window. And I think that it's really, really frustrating for a team like the A's who's shown they can compete, just kind of throw their hands up in the air and be like, yeah, you know what? We're out.
Yeah, I don't get it, especially the core they had with Chapman and Olsen and Manaea, and they traded Chris Bassett. Apologies. Obviously we're the benefactors of that, but still, I mean, it's sad to see. It's sad to see. Buzz, what do you think too? Especially with the Pirates too. I mean, they're perpetually not a good team, and they've even showed that this year with, they traded Adam Frazier last year. They've talked about trading Brian Reynolds. Like, how do you feel about all that?
Yeah, I was going to say, as a Philadelphia sports fan, I, for one, cannot imagine a professional sports franchise not trying to do everything they can to win. So that's kind of a new concept to me. But in all seriousness, I was going to hit on the thing Ray hit on, which was it didn't seem to get a ton of, like, the ball didn't seem to roll that far on it, but the idea of, like, basically a payroll floor or something along those lines, just to force teams to be competitive. In general, I'm a believer in a like free market when it comes to sports. I don't love the idea of like telling teams like you have to try and do this, especially if it seems like they have a plan to be better down the line. Now, also to Ray's point, like the Oakland A's are a small market team that literally had a movie about them from 20 years ago about how they're going to spend the least and get the most out of it. Now they're spending the least and don't seem like their goal is to actually win right now. So I'm not sure if the issue is necessarily the money they're spending, or I think it's more so really just the product they're putting on the field. So the salary floor is an idea. Obviously the baseball, or like the, payroll floor rather, is an idea. I don't really see, baseball is also a little bit trickier with this kind of stuff than a sport maybe like football or basketball is, because there is no salary cap, because the difference between the top and the bottom is so drastic. You had the Rays beat, I forget what the disparity was, but you had the Rays in the pandemic season beat the Yankees in a 5-game series, and they spent like, it was like 20% per win of what the Yankees spent that year, and then they beat them on the field. So baseball is a weird sport like that. As a general rule, I don't love telling teams you have to spend this amount of money, but from a business standpoint, it is a tough sell. It's a tough sell to say to the city of Oakland, like, hey, we want taxpayer dollars to build this brand new stadium. We promise the team will be good in like 4 or 5 years. Or in the case of the, even like a city like Pittsburgh, where that's not an issue, just you have a nice stadium, like, hey, there's nobody showing up. I don't know if you have to start thinking like an owner. I don't know if you have to start changing rules about revenue sharing. That's like, okay, if your team isn't trying to win now, then the owner's really going to get the short end of the stick. Because that's what this stuff usually comes down to at the end of the day. It's money. If you're gonna save money on, spending money on players, then you have to somehow say like, all right, you're not spending any money, so you're not going to get nearly as much money as the team's willing to spend also. So you're talking about totally restructuring like the business model of Major League Baseball in some of these cases, which I get is a very, very hard thing to do. And considering they just renegotiated a CBA and it took them as long as they did, and they didn't get any movement on this stuff at all. I get there was an urgency to get the next season rolling, but perhaps it's something they have to look at in the next CBA, and the owners just have to prioritize it. But it also takes it's like owners calling out their fellow owners. It's like the majority of owners have to say to the ownership in Oakland or Pittsburgh or whatever city is doing this kind of thing, like, hey, you're not really holding up your end of the bargain. We have to penalize you.
And to that point, the owners aren't going to call it the owners, because even the ones that are spending the most are actively trying to spend less, which, from the business standpoint of what they're doing makes sense. To the capitalistic minds in which they exist, they want to spend the least and make the most. That's the way they do business. That's how this is all structured. So to what they're doing, it makes sense to them. But with the idea of, hey, like, call out the guy at the small market. Well, the small market's going to look at someone like a John Middleton and be like, well, you didn't want to pay the tax when you had the MVP on your roster. And so how hard are you trying to win? And then you can get to the depressing conversation of, are any of these teams really trying to win except for like 4 of them? Or are they just trying to do this business and make their money? Which, we could probably do an entire deep dive 10-episode anonymous sources podcast of, this is what the real intention behind all of this is. But I don't want to depress everyone. Opening day is 2 days away when you're watching this.
Exactly.
Ray,
And
are you suggesting that sports owners are not always as concerned with winning as the fan bases who root for them? That sometimes money takes, more of a precedent.
I'm suggesting that the billionaires might not have your best interest in mind. That's all I'm saying.
keep that in mind, baseball fans, because and obviously Ray said, we don't have to talk about all this right now. It is a little bit depressing, but I just I don't know what the solution is, but I hope there's something. I mean, the salary cap floor is a thing that could happen. I know it's talked about, but Buzz, what are you gonna say?
I was going to say, from a player's perspective, because we didn't even really hit on that, like, it is annoying. If you're not one of the best players in the league hitting free agency, like, you're stuck in a spot where it's like, hey, you're getting more playing time than you probably usually would. And it's giving opportunities to guys who, can shine in, the big leagues that probably wouldn't ordinarily get the chance to do so. But it's got to be annoying if you're a good player stuck on a bad team, as it is in any sport, to know that like you're serious about winning and nobody else is, kind of thing. And it's not like we haven't heard players get fed up with the business of baseball before. I thought it was kind of ironic when, Nick Castellanos, like he got up there in Clearwater at the podium and was like basically complaining about the business of Major League Baseball right after he got a $100 million contract, which was kind of like a funny contrast. But the point is that players do see this kind of thing and get fed up with it.
No, easily. I mean, if you take someone like Jose Ramirez, who the Guardians aren't going to be good this year, they also have an extremely low payroll. And he's talking about signing a contract extension, but he might want out. There's been talks about him going to the Blue Jays. Like, I wouldn't want to play for a team that doesn't want to try to win. Like Brian Reynolds too, he's an all-star last year. I don't know if I want to play for the Pirates if they're going to have a $30 million payroll and they're going to be in the basement of the NL Central once again. I have been the last 3 decades, 4 decades, whatever it was, except for a few years. So it's hard. Like, how do you deal with
They're
that?
They're not calling up O'Neal Cruz either.
Exactly.
What is this?
Exactly.
What are we doing here?
And it's crazy because there's other players who are going to get, like Riley Green is going to make the Reds roster and he's going to be good. And I'm really excited to see him. But then you have O'Neal Cruz who's going to be just as good and you're not going to see him. And that's something else they try to stop in the CBA is manipulating service time. And so far, it doesn't look like it's going to be all that successful. So
no.
I don't know. But anyway, you can maybe have you guys back on to talk about all that in depth. I would love to. But we got opening day coming up soon. So let's talk about some baseball on the field. Obviously, I think it was Ray that you mentioned about the expanded playoffs. Maybe it was you, Buzz. I don't know. One of you mentioned the expanded playoffs. 6 teams in this year in each league. 12 total. Which makes room for some sleeper teams, some teams that might get in as a 6 or a 5 seed that could go all the way to the World Series. Obviously, saw the Braves last year, who were an 85 win team, I think it was, won the World Series. So Buzz, we'll start with you. What's one team that, might be flying under the radar a little bit, but you could see playing deep into October?
I don't know about playing deep into October. I feel like, it's a kind of a biased answer, but I'm not sure that any team benefits from this expanded playoffs more so than maybe the Phillies. This is a team who has been kind of riding on the bubble in previous seasons. They would have been the 7 seed last year, I believe. They obviously just missed the playoff. The last time they did expanded playoffs, anything close to this, well, not anything close to this because it was 16 teams, was in the pandemic season. They, of course, missed that year, which was insane because they couldn't do anything down the stretch in September. But the Phillies, with the amount of money they're spending, we all know it seems like they're going to hit. The team's built to hit, not really defend that well. We'll see what you get out of the rotation, your bullpen and things of that nature. But they're going to play in a lot of high-scoring games. And given where the Phillies have kind of been riding, it seems hard, and especially in this division, you're dealing with the defending world champs and the Atlanta Braves. And I know they lost Freddie Freeman, but they're getting Matt Olson, who's also pretty good. And most of that team is still intact. And then we've, discussed I know the Mets are already dealing with the injury bug here with DeGrom. They go out and get Scherzer, and they're obviously very good. I don't know I'm not going to sit here and tell you the Phillies are going to be in contention to win the division, but now there are more teams who, just by virtue of that one more spot in the playoffs, have a chance to just fight their way in as that 6 seed. It's an NFL, it's an old school from a few years ago, NFL style playoffs with 2 less teams. So 15 teams in each league. And now more than a third are getting in from each league. And considering there are, basement teams such as the Pirates or, the Marlins or teams who you do not expect to be, or the Nationals who are bad, you don't expect those teams to be in the mix. So I think any team who puts up a competitive fight and has a winning record, as I think is expected for the Phillies to do so. It took them 10 years to finally get a winning record last year when they won 82, but now I think their expected win totals up to about 86, 87. In previous years to be all right, you're a few games out of the wild card. Now that might get you in. So I think the Phillies are a really solid chance. And, you get into October, you don't really know what can happen. I'm not going to say that they're going to make a deep run into October, but I'm not sure if any team benefits from this expanded playoffs more so than the Phillies. It would have been, I know 14 teams was discussed. And as a baseball fan, I don't necessarily want to see it move that drastically, but as a Phillies fan, yeah, it would have.
Fair, Ray?
I'm going to the AL. I love everything he said about the Phillies, and I'm over the moon about the Phillies because the calendar just flipped to April, and why wouldn't I be? It's usually when the next A month comes around where things start to unravel for me. So we will talk in August, and I will let you know how I feel. Until that point, I think one team that I think I'm going to enjoy watching, that I'm excited about, that I'm not sure just because of the skill of the AL will make a run, is the Tigers. Just so young, so interesting. They bring in Javi. They got Torque now on opening day roster. They've got some solid young pitching. Like, I think there's just a good young core there. Almost like the Blue Jays like 2 years ago. Where it's like, okay, there's a lot of dudes here that, the prospect people look at, this guy, here's the AAA clip from this week that you missed, and he did something really good. And they've been just waiting for that to kind of happen. And each Central Division kind of throws me for a loop. I can kind of guarantee the Cardinals are going to BS their way to 90 wins. But aside from that, any team in the central of the country,
as is tradition.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if the Tigers are going to be a playoff team, like contention-wise, but I do think I'm going to be really excited by watching them. I think they're just going to put together a brand of baseball that makes me interested when I'm, just scrolling TV. I'll probably hit the Tigers game and watch a little bit of it. When it comes to a team that I think can make a run, the Blue Jays. And if we're talking about a sleeper team, the Blue Jays had more wins in the regular season last year than the Braves, but by virtue of the AL East, just straight up did not go to the postseason. Like, just missed out. Too bad. Sorry about your bad luck. 90 wins a year ago. Obviously, no more Marcus Semien, which hurts. But aside from that, they still have their young core intact. They got Chapman there. Like, there's some legitimate pieces for this team to build on what they already did last year. And again, you lose a guy who hit 45 home runs, the top 5 vote getter in the MVP race. Like, that hurts. Don't get me wrong. What they've got, I think there are a couple guys on that team. I mean, I know, being a fantasy owner of Biggio, that Biggio was a wreck last year. If he can get somewhere closer to what they expect from him, he'll be a nice addition that's already on that roster. They can get some of their younger guys to step up and kind of fill the roles they expect. They should be knocking on the doorstep of something. And they're going to be the beneficiary of this whole scheduling change over the next couple of years, where they don't have to go to play the Yankees as much. They don't have to play the Red Sox as much. They don't have to play the Rays as much, and they're not going to get beaten up. I think Jason Stark did an article on that earlier this week, or last week, I guess now, because today's Sunday. Well, today's the day that this comes out, so I'm ruining your timing here for you.
That's okay.
But Jason Stark did a good article on that of like the Rays and Blue Jays win out big because they don't have to deal playing the Red Sox and Yankees as much. It's so true. So I think the Blue Jays, for me, are one of those teams where, I mean, again, they're kind of a fun baseball just because of the guys that have, the last names, really. And it's how our parents feel old, and it's how we have our own generation of young stars to enjoy. But that's my team right there. I want to see what the Blue Jays do this year. I love the absolute insanity of the AL East. Somehow I'll end up on the Rays to win a World Series. I know there'll be a 2-week stretch where it happens. That's another tradition.
It's every year. Every year.
How about like Judge and Rizzo and like any not vaccinated guy in the AL East not being able to play 9 to 10 games in Toronto?
It's gonna be
best home field advantage in the league.
Yeah, I mean it is easily the best home field advantage in the league. I mean, you're gonna have star guys. I mean, there's no NL East teams going up there this year, but like you said with Rizzo and Judge.
Phillies play there 2 games.
Oh, they do? Okay. Well, I mean, there's definitely some Phillies unvaccinated. I think we learned that last year. And I don't think anything's changed. So you're going to have some star players who are not going to be able to make the trip to Toronto, and you're going to have that probably on every team, at least one person. Like you said, Buzz, is the best home field advantage in the league. And that's definitely going to benefit the Blue Jays. So, Ray, that is not a bad pick at all. I'm actually going to keep in the same divisions as you. The Twins, I think, are a team that could be really, really fun to watch this year. Obviously, they signed Correa. Hopefully, Buxton is healthy because that's his biggest thing. But he's an MVP candidate when he's not. So, need him staying on the field. And they have okay pitching. They need to get more pitching, which they talked about acquiring Sean Manaea. That obviously didn't happen. But, maybe they'll get Frankie Montas from the A's as well. Whoever else could be. So I think the Twins are a team to watch this year. English is hard. And another one that I don't even know if this is a sleeper because they finished as the number 1 seed in the AL the last 2 years, but the Tampa Bay Rays are a team that I think have flown on the radar all winter. They might get Glasnow back at some point. I'm unsure. Maybe it'll be later in the season, but They have a complete young superstar in Wander Franco. And they always just find guys out of left field that you just never hear of or know about. If they were outcast on other teams, that especially in the pitching department, where they just find them and put them in the bullpen, and all of a sudden they have like a sub-2 ERA with 60, 70 innings out of the bullpen. So it's pretty crazy. Kevin Cash is obviously, he was the manager of the year a few years ago. I think that's a team that there's a lot of talk about the Red Sox signing Story. Obviously, right, you mentioned the Blue Jays. Yankees are never going anywhere, but watch out for the Rays in the AL East. I think that they could be a good team this year.
If you combined the Rays player development with the amount of money that any of the top 5 teams spend, let's save the Dodgers, because the Dodgers player development is also really, really good. You could have one of the best organizations, like, in all of professional sports in all of the world. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even maybe not even top 5. Maybe it's just a top payroll.
Probably.
Like, they're missing out on multiple titles, and the people of the town don't even know that the game's going on. Like, it's really incredible what the Rays are able to do in the space they do it in.
They need to get out of the Trop. It's plain and simple.
They'd be the Dodgers East if they had that.
Easily.
They'd be the Dodgers East playing in the worst stadium ever, which, by the way, I learned, I think, this week. Do you know Tropicana Field hosted a Final Four in 1999?
Did not know that.
Yeah,
that's
a little
gross. Ew.
Right? It's a
Oh,
little topical.
man.
On Tuesday, we'll know who the champion between Kansas and UNC is. But yeah, we're recording this in between the 2 days of the Final Four in New Orleans. Yeah, 1999. How about that?
Wow.
What a weird stadium.
Who won?
99.
I do not know off the top of my head.
I want to say it was Kentucky, but I don't hold me to that.
This feels disrespectful to
It
whoever
does.
won.
We're going to look it up. I'll put something about it maybe on Twitter or at the end of this, but we will put respect on the 1999 NCAA champions name for sure.
UConn won.
Okay, there you go. Buzz with the research.
Yeah, Richard Hamilton was your most outstanding player of the tournament that year.
There you go. Rip
More you
Hamilton.
know.
The more you know.
They beat Duke.
Which we love to see. Hey, when Duke loses, America wins.
Back when Coach K was still the coach, yeah.
All right. Real quick before we go, I want to get some World Series picks, obviously, because we got opening day in a couple of days. So, Ray, we're gonna start with you. Who do you got? Maybe get a real quick World Series matchup and then champion.
Oh man, you're gonna do this to me? Oh, all right. Let's see. I'm gonna go Dodgers out of the NL. I'd love to be original and have some like crazy crafty take here. I think there's serious dysfunction in San Diego. As good as they've been in acquiring players, I think you're starting to see some of the development and some of the just general organizational failures and what they haven't been able to do the last couple of years. So I don't love them. The Giants obviously didn't have Bryant all of last season, but lost Bryant, also lost Gosman. I still think they're over. I think they're like 86.5 right now in terms of the wins over under. I think that's low. I think they'll be still very good. Obviously, a Kapler stand like myself would believe that. In the NL East, I'm done trying. I don't want to even touch that division. So the Dodgers and the NL come out, and I don't know. Give me the Red Sox? Question mark. I don't know. I don't want to take Yankees Dodgers is like worst case scenario in the world. I would not watch the World Series. We can put that on record. Red Sox Dodgers still very bad. Still don't like it at all. But I guess that's where I'm going. Again, the Central always confuses me. I don't like it. I'm not picking the Astros. I think I'm starting to figure out that I just don't like a lot of teams.
That's fair.
And that might just really be it for me.
All right. Well, there we go. Do you have a champion of that series?
Dodgers.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm picking the team that's like plus 100 to win the title right now. So
what are the Dodgers odds? I haven't looked on to win the World Series.
I can find out maybe after this, or if you want to look while Buzz is answering. While he's looking, Buzz, real quick, let me hear your picks.
Yeah. So once again, I wish I could be original too. Look, that Dodgers team. It feels like they're going to win like 108, 110 games, something crazy like that. The NL playoffs are going to run through them. I wish I had a reason why they would not go and win the World Series. I don't necessarily have a great one other than it's baseball, and sometimes things get weird. And for a while there, it felt like the Dodgers were the team that couldn't go over the hump. In the AL, so Ray picked the Red Sox, and he did mention the Yankees. It does feel like that, I know I just made the Coach K joke, but it does feel like that the Yankees have been, and I'm relating this to Coach K because obviously like the Yankees are like, the team that everybody either loves or loves to hate kind of thing. And it feels like what happened last night with Coach K feels like that was like the peak of people who root against those kind of teams. That was like their Super Bowl. And that the year 2022, the sports gods just have to even that kind of thing out, like the evil empire kind of thing. The Yankees have been knocking on the door for a while, and historically in their franchise history, they do not go through like World Series droughts for this long. And the fact that they haven't played in the World Series, they haven't been in the World Series since 09 when they beat the Phillies. No, that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah, they haven't been in the World Series since 09. Philly been knocking on the door for a while. I have a horrible feeling it's going to be Yankees Dodgers. I think the Dodgers would win the series. Major League Baseball would be ecstatic because again, they're two polarizing teams from the two biggest media markets in the country. So I'll say Dodgers over the Yankees. It's not really original. It's nothing, no new insight. But it does feel like perhaps on vibes alone, bad vibes alone, it'll be those two teams. There are a few other teams who, we mentioned the American League East might be
stacked.
Just one of the best divisions to watch in all of baseball this year. Whether it's the Blue Jays, you'll see where they seed out. The Red Sox, the Yankees, the Rays. Like they got 4 legitimate teams. It feels like, and they're all kind of coming. They've either been on that main stage or they've come into their own where they deserve to be playing on that main stage. So I think the Dodgers are clearly the team to beat in the National League from day one. It's not as clear cut in the American League. Morello, I don't know if you looked it up too, but I just pulled up the updated odds. So according to OddsShark, Dodgers plus 450. Next highest is Blue Jays plus 800. The Yankees a little bit of a further down take. They're plus 1,000 to win the World Series.
Okay.
But I'll go Dodgers, Yankees. By the way, your Mets are plus 1,000 also. So the two New York.
Yeah, they're up there. They're up there. I mean, the DeGrom news didn't help, but
this could be, you're talking about the Phillies Mets rivalry coming back. Like, is this the year we see the Subway Series come at its peak kind of thing too? That's something to look at as well. I know they've both been good at the same stretches as well, but just from a baseball fan perspective, it's always cool when those two teams, from a city perspective matchup, even though I don't really like either.
Fair. I'm gonna make this quick because we got about a minute left in the Zoom because we've been talking a lot of baseball, which is great, but unfortunately I do not have the upgraded version of Zoom. So real quick, I think the Braves are gonna go back to the World Series.
That the Morello show isn't covered?
No. We'll get there at some point. I'm gonna go Braves to go back to the World Series. I think the young pitching is gonna help get them there. I think Olsen to Freeman isn't a downgrade at all. So I think I'm gonna go Braves, and then I think I'm gonna go with the Tampa Bay Rays, like I had said before. That pitching and that lineup can definitely get them there. Give me the Rays. Give me the Rays to finally get over the hump and do it.
Rays. All right, so you had Rays over Braves. I had Dodgers over Yankees. Ray has.
I've sat here and I decided I'm rooting for the small guy. Go Blue Jays. Let's go. Okay.
Right, so you had Dodgers over Red Sox, just so we can go back.
I'm going Dodgers over Blue Jays. Change editorial.
Dodgers over Blue Jays. He's changing.
All right, there we go. Thank you both for coming on. Very much appreciate you as always. Make sure you tune into the Morello Show, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Love you guys. Baseball season's upon us.
Love to see
See you next time.